Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. We have episode number 6 of Obi-Wan and I'm super excited because this series has been a ride. Let's get into it. So first we open up here on Tatooine. We get to see Obi-Wan's old boss coming through and still being a jerk. I kind of laugh at this part though because he absolutely cuts in front of like 6 people and is just being a douche. And when Reva comes up, he's like, wait your turn. Like, didn't you just... Nah, I don't know. He's surprised he didn't lose a hand. I was hoping he'd get a bit more. One of the cool details though is you can see that there's bandages wrapped around Reva, and that's because she was just stabbed. Like, she is not well. She's clinging on to life just out of spite, but she's bandaged up to try and hold herself together. Also, the clothes that she's wearing in this scene is very reminiscent to Luke in Return of the Jedi. Yes, contrary to popular belief, it is not a black cloak that Luke wears in Return of the Jedi. It is a brown cloak over his black garb. Of course, he was rocking the Chanel boots then. So that's a little bit of a difference, but you know, this kind of lends some credence to the thought that each of the episodes were supposed to parallel the corresponding episode of the saga. Then we get to the space chase, and I've been hearing people say, "Oh, this is reminiscent of the Last Jedi space chase." Not really. It's it's really the same as every space chase in Star Wars because there's only so much you can do. Actually, it's mostly reminiscent of The Empire Strikes Back, only this pilot does no maneuvers. I also like that they're using the music from Empire Strikes Back. I love this theme, especially when it plays on Hoth. Also, I just love Roken's like small little arc. Like this show actually takes a lot of great care with all of the characters, and each one ends up in a different place than they started. You know, we just saw in 2-3 episodes ago, he was mad that Obi-Wan showed up. Like, you are gonna bring them to our doorstep. Now, right now, Obi-Wan is on the ship, and they're being chased because of Obi-Wan, and he's willing to keep Obi-Wan on board and have them all go down together because he doesn't think it's right to abandon them. Like, that's so cool, and I really hope that we get this character in further projects, especially like Andor. I think he'd be a great fit in there. One of the funniest things that have come out of this show was watching all these people yell at things that they consider plot holes that are nowhere near them. When in actuality, this show actually like strengthens things that happen in A New Hope. Specifically this moment with Leia. We see that even as a kid, there's peril around, they're fighting for their lives. People have already died and more might. And what is she doing? She's out there trying to cheer up the other kids on board. Part of one of the things I kind of hated that they did with the character in A New Hope is after Alderaan has been exploded and Obi-Wan, the guy that she called for, dies, she's on a Millennium Falcon like comforting Luke. But we get to see that that's part of who she is. I really like that addition. Another minor character, we got Haja, and he has his little growth arc. He was inspired by Obi-Wan. He's been inspired by the Tales of the Jedi just in general, and having him be part of the path is really cool. I do hope we get more with Kumail Nanjiani, because I don't think you get a character like that, an actor like that in the role, and just leave him at that. You know, hopefully we see more. The show also gives a lot of love to Owen and Peru. I mean, especially Anne Peru, when she's like, Peru stays strapped. She's going to protect her own. She's going to do it where they have the best chance, and she's not going to endanger other people because of this cause. Like, I don't know, it just felt cool. Could Vader have just used the shuttle himself and left the Star Destroyer to keep going after him? Yes, absolutely. But that's not Vader. He is... especially not at this point in time, he's emotional and petulant, and Obi-Wan knew this. This is Anakin here, so yeah, the plan went off without a hitch. A more rational person would have been able to get both targets, but we aren't dealing with rational. We're dealing with Anakin. I think it's cool that Owen still wants Luke to have a regular life. Now, they live in a pretty treacherous place, and there's Tuskens, and he's kind of using them as a scapegoat. Although that might be considered culturally offensive now that we know that not all of them are like that. But you know, then again, they are talking about this in the same room that Anakin came back to after his mom was brutally murdered. So I guess there is some precedent. Overall, this was just a clever way of having Luke be able to run without looking back, without understanding what the true danger that was really after him is, in order to help keep the timeline intact. Like, this show does a great job of avoiding actually breaking canon. And of course, Obi-Wan lands on this desolate moon and is ready to face off against Vader, but he gets a little piece of hope because he was scared. That's what he told Leia. So what does she do? She gave him Lola, and she gave him it during a hug, which is the exact opposite of how she took it back from her mother in the very first episode. So now we're going to talk all about the duel, and then we're going to come back to the Tatooine stuff afterwards. I know we cut back and forth between it, but we're going to take one at a time. And this fight scene was awesome. One of my favorite fights in all of Star Wars. The choreography, just, you could feel that they were actually trying to hurt each other, trying to kill each other. Yes, a lot of people love the prequel fights. I do as well. They were very, very meticulously choreographed, similar to dancing, to be quite honest. The choreography is a little bit over the top. This felt more grounded, plus the addition of using a lot more force powers during their fight was just really cool. Also, they used their fighting styles in order to tell a story during this fight, which is, I mean, I think the most important part of duels in Star Wars is the story that is being communicated, right? Not only is it the actual fight itself, but it's the emotional weight behind it. It's the story that built up to this moment, and so where will they go from here? Now, I did a live reaction with a bunch of people. Here's all of our reaction to Obi-Wan pulling up the old stance.
Oh, he did the thing! Yes! Yes!
Now, obviously the stance is Cerritos stance. He's trying to be the Obi-Wan that he was before and fight Vader roughly the same way. And he starts out pretty well. Vader even comments, wow, you've gotten your strength back. But it's not enough. And Vader makes that very, very obvious very early on, in just the most badass way. Vader's been practicing and preparing and dreaming about this. This fight was on his vision board, and he's been working towards it every single day. I also think it's pretty cool how Vader picked up some earthbending techniques. But yeah, I mean, way to make sure you always have the high ground, like, for sure. He means to bury him.
Like the pharaohs of old.
Now, I absolutely love this part of the fight because Obi-Wan is buried. He's using the Force to hold himself up, to save himself, and he's re-listening to these lines that were being said from the previous episode, from Revenge of the Sith, and from episode number 3. And these are all of his failures, like his darkness, what he's done wrong. And then the light breaks through. And you see how bright and hopeful these scenes look. He stops thinking about what he's lost. He stops thinking about the past. He stops thinking about, the negative and bad things, and focuses on the future, on the hope, on the light, on the children, on Luke and Leia and what they represent and what they can potentially do. And just like we hear about in the High Republic, a Jedi is at their greatest strength when they are protecting others. And man, like, he goes all out. One of the interesting things you'll notice, though, when he comes back up is he is not fighting like Obi-Wan did in the past. Now he's switched tactics and he's using Ataru, a form we don't really get to see him use very often. This was Qui Gon's form. It's also Yoda's form, and we see him quickly start to overwhelm Vader. Obi-Wan shows us one of the most powerful acts that we've ever seen come from him. Ben Skywalker in my chat called it unhinged space Jesus, and I am inclined to agree. It was pretty freaking badass. It evokes a lot of scenery from Rey in The Last Jedi, and it also harkens back to Empire Strikes Back when Luke asks Yoda, is the dark side stronger? Darkness is quick to join you in a fight. That's why we see all the dark thoughts that Obi-Wan said. Not that he's using the dark side or anything like that, but it actually takes effort. He has to choose the light and choose to focus on that. And that's when he gets, force buffed. Then we get the big moment. Obi-Wan makes a big old jumping move and takes off part of Vader's masks. In the process, he also scars the top of his head. I'm so happy it showed that, because people complaining that, oh, he didn't have the scar in his head. Yeah, this is how he got it. it was just so irritating listening to people complain about things that you just have to watch the show to find out. Now, there are some complaints, and I do get it, that we've already seen this in Rebels, but the big thing is we have not seen this in live action, and not everyone who watches the show is going to watch Rebels. Not only that, but I actually think it's helped by Rebels. You see, Ahsoka took out one side, Obi-Wan took out the other side. It's not until Luke finds it much later that he's able to take the whole mask off and look at him with his own eyes as Anakin. We also get a brief shot at a moment that looks vaguely familiar. Doesn't this kind of look like the cover art for Rise of Skywalker? You tell me. I really enjoyed how they played with the light here, showing the themes of light and dark. This is something that we kind of missed in the original trilogy, mostly due to the fact that they added in they rotoscoped the color in later. So they weren't fighting with any colors. It was just kind of like a foil wrapped rod. In the scenes, so we didn't get to see the color interact with the people at all. The way we see both the red and the blue flickering off of his face until he drops the line and it all turns red is very reminiscent to what we got in The Force Awakens with Kylo Ren trying to make his choice between going down the light and the dark path. Obi-Wan's tearful, pained "I'm sorry's" are just heartbreaking. Now, one thing I'm curious about is what everyone's thoughts are on the Vader line here. I think there's a lot of possible meanings here. We'll be talking about this for weeks, but I am not your failure. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. What I took of that is I actually thought of it as Anakin doing or saying something that he thought would hurt Obi-Wan. Of like, no, this is my choice. But not only that, it's the dead-on truth. We like to think about Vader as the guy in the suit, but he became Vader well before he put on the suit. He was Vader when he was slaughtering younglings and all that stuff. I kind of harken back to the scene on Mustafar where he's looking out over the lava and he has a single tear in his Sith eyes, and I feel like that is Vader mourning what Anakin was in that scene. I think that's when Anakin kind of truly died. Then we get the hard-hitting, "Then my friend is truly dead." Whew, I love it. Even more than that, I love that he just calls him Darth. Like, listen, if that's who you want to be, if this title was more to you than everything else, that's all you'll ever be. And then, just as whiny as he ever was, he just starts yelling, "Obi-Wan!" The mixture of the voices was just a beautiful touch. Yes, we did get it in Rebels, but this one, now we're getting Hayden Christensen's voice with the James Earl Jones kind of voice over, and it works both times. It really does. Should Obi-Wan have killed Anakin right then and there? Yeah, probably. Probably should have kind of put him out of his misery. I expected something to at least make him think that he might be dead, not just leaving him there. But I don't know. You can't keep crippling people and just leaving them behind, But yes, there's continuity to think about. I do love, though, that this does bridge all of those phrases and things that were said in other Star Wars movies, because they didn't line up before. Revenge of the Sith kind of didn't line up with the canon things that were said in A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. And so I'm so happy we have this, and that actually works better now than it did before. All right, now that we've talked about that beautiful fight scene, let's go back to Reva on Tatooine. When Luke is little, we got a "I'm not afraid," out of him, which obviously he says that in Empire Strikes Back. And we get the "You will be" line from Yoda following that. Is this fan service? Yes and no. Think about it. There are certain phrases that we all say and just have carried with us. So him saying "I'm not afraid," I totally believe that he still says it after all this time. I'm really happy about the defense that Owen and Peru put up. Like, they were just not having it. But Peru's just straight up starts blasting them.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
I will say they're very lucky that Reva was grievously injured. Otherwise, she would have handled that business real quick. I mean, she still does, but it would have been a lot faster and more brutal. As much as Star Wars is about hope, it's also about found family, and that's kind of what we have here. We get the line from Reva, "You really love him, don't you? Like he's your own." And Uncle Owen just looks her back and says, "He is my own." Ooh. powerful moments, and it jumps all the way back to episode number 1, where we get Bail Organa talking to Leia and telling her she's an Organa in every single way. You know that type of love, despite knowing, who her father was and him loving her anyways, and basically Luke getting the same treatment. Ooh, I know that had an effect on Leia and why she took Rey in under her wing, and why Rey felt comfortable taking the Skywalker name in the end. It's really beautiful how all of this kind of builds up. Both Leia and Luke had like such great father and mother figures, that they got to carry that forward. I don't know what it is, but I really love these like all-purpose like long poles in Star Wars. He's fighting her with the same pole that you find in the trash compactor on the Death Star, and the same thing that Din Djarin put in his ship, and it made it faster. And what does it do? Like truly, it's like a weird all-purpose rod. It just makes me laugh. But it also reveals that Reva's weakness when he hits her in the side. That allows him to just like poke her in the wound, which she was not a fan of. So she threw him off the walkway, and that's where he injures his knee, and we get the limp that we see in A New Hope. But yeah, it's pretty clever that they keep Luke running and he's never looking back. He never sees the lightsaber, so he doesn't actually know what was chasing him. She actually uses the Force to knock him off the ledge, and so he probably doesn't even know any of what happened, thus keeping the continuity correct. He still doesn't know what a lightsaber is, so he can be taught that by Obi-Wan in episode 4. Now, Reva has proven to be such an intricate and deep character. I've enjoyed watching her arc from the first episode. We see her look down and see herself in Luke and realize what she's becoming. The same thing that happened to her and her friends when she was younger, she's now doing for what she considers justice, but it's not right. She's perpetuating the same cycle of violence. It's really cool to see someone that was on the same path as Anakin, but is able to make a different choice. And then eventually when Reva can't go through with it, she brings him back. And even her carrying him back harkens us back to episode number 2, bringing Shmi Skywalker in. And they don't truly know if Luke is alive or dead till she sets him down and he starts moving. Then we get all of that relief. And then Moses Ingram acts her face off. Her arc is so unique and complex. She cries to Obi-Wan because she couldn't kill Luke, but she says, "I failed them." She was trying to get justice for all of her lost friends, all of the lost Jedi, the only family she's ever known. And so she's talking to another Jedi about this because he would understand. Of course, she's also trying to kill the person that he's protecting. But Obi-Wan was just recently able to let go of his past. And now he's able, with that new clarity, to help Reva, move past her own. Reva asks, "Have I become him?" And Obi-Wan says, "No, you've chosen not to." And this is powerful words because just a little bit ago, Anakin said to Obi-Wan, "I'm not your failure. The person who killed Anakin Skywalker is me." It was his choice. He chose that path. Going to the dark side is not a one-time mistake. It's a series of intentional choices. And that's exactly what Anakin made. And that's why this is different. Reva made a different choice. Then we jump back to Mustafar and we get a conversation between Vader and Palpatine. He's still obsessed. He will hunt down Obi-Wan Kenobi, but then he gets a little question from Palpatine. And I love this question because it's like somewhat innocuous, but it's very, very menacing at the same time. He even uses kind of his Senator Palpatine type voice, like when he says this, but when he finishes up, he's full on Sidious. He doesn't care about Anakin, but he knows that left to his own devices, Anakin will spiral out of control. He will chase his heart. He will probably end up turning back to light on his own if he doesn't get course corrected all of the time. We actually see this quite a bit in Vader 2015, in Vader 2017, and this was the biggest part of the Vader 2020 run. It starts out with him searching for what happened to Padme, and when Palpatine finds out, he basically puts him to a trial and says, listen, you need to cut that stuff out. All right, Vader, Anakin's gone. You are just Vader now. And we even kind of see this in The Empire Strikes Back when he is talking about Luke, calls him the offspring of Anakin Skywalker. However, when we jump ahead to Return of the Jedi, we get something different. Palpatine tells Vader to wait on the shuttle, but Vader comes back. He says, a small shuttle landed on the moon, and my son is with them. He calls him my son in that scene. That's a bold move. So Palpatine says the same line. Are you sure your feelings on this are clear? Oof. Palpatine's a cold man. The threat he leaves, if your past cannot be overcome, he doesn't even have to say it. And we know this because in the comics, he is a beast. Vader rides in on the Sumo Verminal thinking that he is hot stuff, and Palpatine puts that thing into the ground right quick and in a hurry. Then we jump back to Alderaan, and we get a changed Leia. Like, she is different from the first scene. I mean, actually, it's not her in the first scene. But in the first scene, they would have been getting ready by having a team of people putting her clothes on. This time, she's doing it by herself. She's choosing her own style. She's going utilitarian. She's got combat boots, and she puts on Tala's holster, the one with the markings for all the Jedi that she's saved. The last marking would have been her, and I just think that's so cool. We also get to see her wear this holster in the comics, and I just love how they make this stuff go full circle. Deborah Chow, in the interviews, they all talked about how much she knew about canon, how clear she was on it, but the details this goes into is just freaking awesome. And when Obi-Wan walks on that transport, he has swagger back. You know that the real Obi-Wan is back. The person that will become Alec Guinness is back. No, and you kind of laugh because Obi-Wan's is just a much better person than I am. When Bail Organa says, we can never repay me, look back, like, she's a queen, he's a senator, like, you could try. I wouldn't be opposed to something, a small token, Also, side note, it's super cute that as soon as she gets Lola back, you can see Lola is in the holster that she's wearing. I know, it's just adorable. One of the things that the music throughout the series has done is it'll give us a couple beats of an older theme and then go into something on its own or something of its own. Because these characters we aren't telling those stories, we're telling a story that relates to them, which has been pretty cool for the most part. We are getting real themes in this episode, so we get like 2 really small beats of Across the Stars when Obi-Wan first starts to tell Leia about her mother and father, and then it goes straight into Leia's theme. But one thing that's really cool is now that Obi-Wan has been able to kind of let go of the past, to reconcile what has happened, he can now remember Anakin for the good parts of him. He can see the good, kind-hearted person that he used to know and still mourn that person while understanding that Anakin has become a monster. And then we come full circle. We get Leia asking, am I ever going to see you again? And Obi-Wan tells her, yes, if you need help from a tired old man. But we must be careful. No one can know. It can endanger us both. And I feel like this is their way of saying, shut up. To the people who are complaining, how come in her message she doesn't mention that they know each other? Which, by the way, is just not a plot hole. Like, it doesn't constitute anything that would be like a plot hole. It's a question that you have, and now we have the answer. She was told to play it cool. But clearly she knew who Ben was in A New Hope, and she knew him as Ben. I love that we get the white robe with the brown jacket and goggles of Obi-Wan version that we see in the comics. I got asked this question a lot of like the timeline, and yeah, just like I had confirmed, the events of this story take place first, and then the comics that we get to introduce to like Black Chrysanthemum all happen later and still on Tatooine. One of the things that I think got learned in this whole thing was to pay attention to the living force, which is what Qui-Gon has been telling everyone from day one. Of course, the Phantom Menace was still a very, very long time ago, but he comes back, he brings the toys, and he says, I think Luke just needs to be a boy. He just needs to be a kid. He needs to learn and grow and, do his thing. And when the time is right, he'll come. The Force, he has that trust, that faith in the Force now, which I think is a beautiful thing and lends itself to the next scene. But we'll get there in a moment. Of course, we get the first meeting of Obi-Wan and little Luke, and he gives us a hello there. But more specifically, he gives us the Alec Guinness hello there. Then, like we've all been predicting, we see Qui Gon Jinn. We actually see him as a Force ghost, and this was awesome. I was just super happy, super excited to see this, and he's still sassy. They haven't seen each other in a very long time, and this guy is still sassy. But one of the interesting things is that he says he's always been there, which is pretty cool considering we've heard him a number of times. We hear his voice in Attack of the Clones as he was watching over Anakin. He appears to Yoda in the Clone Wars, and we also have him appear in Clone Wars in the Mortis arc in the flesh as well. Does this break canon that he's able to physically appear and not just be a voice? No. He was able to retain his consciousness, and when you get new information, you need to add it. This expands the canon. Now, we've already known that he's been able to corporealize himself ever since 2017. That year, we got the book From a Certain Point of View, A New Hope. The short story Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray in From a Certain Point of View, A New Hope is actually told from Qui-Gon Jinn's point of view. He separates himself, his consciousness, from the living Force quite painfully, if I might add, but is able to slowly build his body back up. So we've known he's been able to do this since 2017, but not everyone reads books, which is okay. No one's saying you have to, but you have to consider that when new stuff comes about, like he still has his consciousness. So why couldn't he learn something afterwards? Why couldn't he teach himself how to corporealize in the over 10-year gap in between when that was said? And it's actually told from Qui-Gon's perspective. He explains how he corporealizes his body. So obviously he was able to learn in that time period. Remember, he was able to save his consciousness, and because he has his consciousness, he can still learn stuff. No, it doesn't break canon. But the cool thing is he said that he's always been there. That means he was there. He was watching the fight. I actually want to find places where I think Qui-Gon was, because we do know that at certain points in time, he did kind of start to breach that wall a little bit. But this isn't anything new. We remember, even though Yoda wasn't dead at this point in time, he reached out and spoke to Ezra in season 1 of Rebels. Now, Ezra couldn't see him, but he could in season 2 because his strength in the Force had grown. In this case, I really believe that it's Obi-Wan's reliance on the living Force helps him feel it and helps him hear the call, hear the communication of the Force quite a bit clearer. Now, we heard Qui-Gon's voice saying Anakin no when Anakin was about to slaughter the Tuskens. We also saw him appear on the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars, as well as talk to Yoda on Dagobah. Now I gotta ask, where else might he have been? Anyways, let's wrap up. There were issues with the show, right? There's some things that I kind of disagreed with some of the choices that characters made, or there are certain things that I consider to be plot conveniences that are outside of the realm of what we would typically see in Star Wars. Additionally, I think that the volume, while being amazing technology and able to very cheaply make incredible and beautifully detailed sets, has its limits. There are times where they're trying to interact with something that's really large, something that's really far away, or like ship, and the perspectives kind of get a little wonky. Every now and then there was some clunky dialogue, but that's kind of par for the course for Star Wars. We can't ever forget that Star Wars at its core is camp, and it has always been camp. And mind you, I think it always should be camp. All in all, I really enjoyed the series. I would give it an 8 out of 10. I do think this finale was the best finale that we've seen on any Disney Plus thing altogether. And I think that's largely due to the style of storytelling. This was one story told over 6 parts. This wasn't individual episodes with an overarching theme where they're expecting the last episode to be that much better than the previous ones. That's not how that would work. But I think telling a long narrative like this divided into 6 parts also has its drawbacks, although I would love to rewatch this in kind of one sitting. I think part of the drawbacks were because there was a lot of, well, really dumb people yelling really loud for really lame reasons. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, do all the things. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we're looking forward to Andor. We'll check that out next. And may the Force be with you.